So, we're electing Britain's next top Islamist. If you don't know what this is in reference to, this is the Muslim Council of Britain. And we're going to do a detour to a story from the last year that flew under a lot of people's radar, because this report from an ostensibly named institution called the Centre for Media Monitoring alleged that places like GB News have, and I quote, an excessive focus on Muslims bordering on an obsession. Because apparently GB News reported on Islam within a year 1,180 times, and it was 60% of all news coverage compared to BBC News and Sky News relating to Islam. Now, in this report, they also included coverage of the grooming gangs, the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs in over 50 towns and cities across England and Wales, should be stipulated, as report on Muslims. So, interesting conflation there. They do call it so-called grooming gangs, so they're obviously child abuse deniers. Yeah, quite. But the authors were white men. It has this very neutral name, and it doesn't stipulate that this Centre for Media Monitoring, in this Guardian article, is owned by something called the Muslim Council of Britain. And I want to ask a question today. Not why does the Muslim Council of Britain exist? Why are they not a prescribed organisation like lots of other Islamist groups? And I think that's a fair characterisation, given the candidates that Policy Exchange has found are running for their new Secretary General. And these are the chaps in the leadership election. This is their report that you can go and read on Policy Exchange at the time. I'm gonna read some extracts from this. I think I might be able to download the report actually and open it. It should open in another tab, hopefully. Here we go. So this is by Andrew Gilligan. So the Muslim Council of Britain's relationship with wider society is already troubled, the report writes. Governments of all stripes have refused to deal with it since 2009. Under the current Secretary General, Zahra Mohammed, the Muslim Council of Britain sought to present an image of change and sought re-engagement with the government after they were banned. Its claims of change were not accepted, and it was not re-engaged with, either by the last Conservative or the present Labour government. Now, that's not quite accurate, because if you go onto the Muslim Council of Britain's website, the Muslim Council of Britain is responding to the government's Muslim Brotherhood review. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hang on a minute. Muslim Brotherhood review? What?
They're the prison gang, right?
No, they're the founders of Hamas.
Oh.
The Muslim Brotherhood prison gangs are in correspondence with the Muslim Brotherhood.
Oh, okay.
But they were the ones that came...
It's not even like a Socialist League versus the League of Socialists. They're literally just called the same thing.
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
They're not inventive in the cousin marrying world, remember. But the Muslim Brotherhood were founded after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire to create a sort of pan-continental Islamic movement, and they helped co-sponsor terrorism across the globe. They co-founded Hamas. They actively encouraged and supported October 7th and various other terror attacks that are infamous. We're going to park that review to the side for a moment, because why would the Muslim Council of Britain need to respond to allegations about connections to the Muslim Brotherhood? Good question, we'll get onto that in a bit. But they say in this about their connections to the UK government, and I quote, "It's simply untrue to state, as the findings do," and they say number 24 here from the report, "that the government has had no substantive dialogue with the Muslim Council of Britain after relations were temporarily suspended in 2009. In fact, relations resumed in late 2009 and early 2010. Two cabinet ministers, and this is under the Cameron government, attended a Muslim Council of Britain spring dinner in 2010 and 2011. The then Attorney General was chief guest at the Muslim Council of Britain award ceremony. Of course, we would wish our relationship to be stronger as critical friends, but we are acutely aware that ideologues with dubious links to Islamophobes," Islamophobia, by the way, is a phrase invented by the Muslim Brotherhood, "and linked to the Conservative Party, have consistently tried to discredit the Muslim Council of Britain and prevent an independent British Muslim organisation from engaging in the public space. And also, as of, this was 2023, so a year and a bit ago now, turns out the Ministry of Defence were using the Muslim Council of Britain to hire their imams as chaplains." So we had an organisation that the government itself had cut ties with in 2009 that said they might have links to the Muslim Brotherhood who founded Hamas, picking the imams for the army. Yeah, not great. A letter from the Ministry of Defence in 2021 said, "The Ministry of Defence does have an arrangement to consult with the Muslim Council of Britain in the appointment of imams in the armed services. The Muslim Council of Britain is one of many endorsing authorities used by the Ministry of Defence." And a post on the Council's website on the 26th of July 2023 boasted that the first imam to receive a commission in the Royal Air Force had been endorsed by the Muslim Council of Britain. Since this Conservative MP by the name of Nick Timothy, who's been involved in getting data out about illegal immigration. He's one of the sort of Robert Jenrick hand-picked cohort. He revealed that the Muslim Council of Britain have a charitable foundation, a bit like, you know how Hope Not Hate do like loads of political stuff, and they've got the Hope Not Hate charitable foundation they funnel money through. Yet 3/4 of their funding recently has been received from the government's Department of Work and Pensions. So the government's just giving them their entire budget.
They're funding the people creating problems so that they have something to manage once the problems happen.
Quite. Now, if you're thinking, okay, why were the Muslim Council of Britain banned in 2009 in the first place? Well, I covered this a little while ago in an extensive report on Islamic entryism and activism in the Home Office and in the UK government. The Muslim Council of Britain's been banned from engaging with Whitehall because its Deputy Director General, Dr. Daud Abdullah, signed something called the Istanbul Declaration in 2009. The declaration committed to, and I quote, carry on with the jihad and resistance against the occupier until the liberation of all of Palestine, and was therefore interpreted as calling for attacks on the British Royal Navy by stating, quote, the sending of foreign warships into Muslim waters, claiming to control the borders and prevent the smuggling of arms to Gaza, is a declaration of war which must be rejected and fought by all ways and means. I would think fought by all ways and means and jihad in the same declaration makes it pretty clear that they're advocating for violence against the UK, but apparently they claim...
Well, these are always large international movements because they see themselves as one united people.
Yeah, the word would be Ummah, of course, but don't worry, collective consciousness is not a real thing. Everyone's just an atomised, free-floating individual who abides by British values and contributes to the economy. The MCB claims it apparently never endorsed the declaration, despite its Deputy Director General writing in the declaration, but there you go. And they reject that they endorse an attack on the Royal Navy. However, also under Abdullah, they led a 6-year boycott of Holocaust Memorial Day. And on October the 8th, 2023, they said we need to end the violence in and around Gaza while failing to make any comment on October the 7th. So, bit suspicious. Yeah. Robert Jenrick actually reiterated the ban on any engagement across Whitehall in 2023 when he was community secretary. It doesn't look like anyone paid attention. So look, these aren't great people all round. So this is the background for the Muslim Council of Britain overall. Well, looking at the actual research from Policy Exchange, we can look at, okay, maybe their new leadership might represent a more moderate, a more, don't laugh, a more sensible direction. Maybe this is just, we keep hearing...
I'm a well-humoured man, that's all, you know.
It's your northern cynicism in you, my friend. Yeah. We keep hearing about all the moderate Muslims that exist, right? Don't pay no attention to the Henry Jackson Society polling that said 3/4 of them think Hamas did nothing wrong. About 52% of them want the drawings of the Prophet Muhammad to be illegal. We just passed...
The high likelihood that entire communities of them were keeping hush the grooming.
Oh, it's not just a likelihood, they admitted it. I mean, they started fights at the grooming gang sentencing hearing with the victims, and when their dads were sentenced, after they'd read out all the crimes of them raping children, they shouted, I love you, Dad.
A proud and honourable culture.
Absolutely, diversity is our strength. But, okay, we keep hearing about all these moderate Muslims, which I'm sure exist. Maybe they're going to be led this time around by the Muslim Council of Britain. Well, the two candidates that are running for support, their names are Wajid Akhtar and Mohammed Adries. So let's go with Wajid Akhtar first, okay? Prime British name. He's a doctor from Essex. Several of his articles have been deleted, but Policy Exchange have managed to crib this intellectual prowess from the Internet Archives. He wrote in 2022, so not very recent at all, to be a Muslim today is an act of revolutionary defiance standing at odds with the prevailing culture in many ways. He advocates British Muslims identify primarily as Muslim rather than as British. Assimilation at work. In the same article, he wrote, most people teach their children to be their nationality or ethnicity first, but this gives such a limited and limiting view of yourself and others that this can lead children to be shallow. It is literally how the evils of nationalism, racism, and fascism are born.
Buzzwords. Just buzzwords.
It's buzzword buckshot.
It's
pow!
Let's just throw out all the buzzwords to say that we should be in charge, we should have more power, please Gibbs.
Yeah, this is obvious subversion.
And the funny thing is that I always see with these types of people is that they always try and make it sound as though they are an invading force of fierce warriors, when in fact they're a bunch of scroungers begging for handouts from the government, and for some reason our government is always just more than happy to give them what they're asking for.
Keep that frame of being an invading force in mind.
Yeah, they're just beggars.
Yeah, that's not... He actually thinks of himself as an invading force.
Oh, of course they do.
But anyway, right, getting on with his anti-racism, I'm sure he's hope not hate indoors. Choosing faith as a primary identity for your children, and of course yourself, allows a solid foundation upon which to approach the world. Note that I say primary as opposed to only. Teach them to be Muslim primarily. Make your children realise they are heirs to an ancient and proud nation, so they can hold their head up high. The author here, Andrew, notes that the ancient and proud nation he's referring to is not British, of course. It's the Ummah, the sort of global community of Muslims founded in Mecca and Medina by Muhammad. Akhtar then said, celebrating New Year's was the first step on a slippery slope by adopting the celebrations of others. We are not harmlessly saying few words or just enjoying ourselves. We are opening the door to disappearing within the dominant culture, to a future which our children have Muslim names, but otherwise are indistinguishable from non-Muslims in their habits, customs and appearances.
But why they no integrate, though?
Oh, no.
Literally saying that integration is bad for us, don't do it.
Yes, so I've been reliably informed by Fraser Nelson in The Telegraph in the article which sparked this entire grooming gang scandal going global, catching Elon Musk's attention, that Britain is an integration miracle because Mohammed Salah put up a Christmas tree. And yet, Muslim Council of Britain say we will not integrate. Interesting.
Materialism does have many temptations involved in it that can attract basically anybody, but it can go only so far. There's only so much of somebody's personal character and religious sentiment and feeling that they can get rid of by buying an iPad.
Yes, liberal secularism is not some ineluctable spell that will coax even the most indigestible tribal diaspora out of their barbarian ways. It turns out. But they did pass through the passport gates of Heathrow and Gatwick, and all were born on British soil. Therefore, they're indistinguishable from you and me, Harry.
I guess I'll just pluck my eyeballs out then, so I don't notice any differences.
Fair point, well done. The New Year, he says, was a pagan event that Muslims should not take part in because it usually involves un-Islamic practices, such as mixed gender events where people wear fashionable clothes. Pretty big indictment of Muslim fashion, but there you go. Dance and sing songs. Yes.
They can dance and sing just like us.
There's a saying that's actually un-Islamic to dance and sing. There we go. It is necessarily an Islam-free zone, tell that to Sadiq Khan, not least because it has no basis or relationship to Islam. And anyway, what is there to celebrate? New Year's is a celebration that is completely cut off from the reality of the rest of the Ummah. The starvation in Somalia, the murder in Syria, the imprisonment of Gaza, and the ethnic cleansing in Burma. Literally, all of these are just foreign sectarian conflicts that have been made the prevailing political life in England because of mass immigration. Thank you so much, our treacherous elites. I really appreciate it. I'm glad I have to report on and care about this. Akhtar was a leading activist and spokesman for the Muslim vote as well. So he helped to get the 4 pro-Gaza, just pro-Gaza, I'm sure, MPs elected last July, including the chap Iqbal Muhammad, who was the one that was standing up and defending cousin marriage in Parliament. I'm sure just for familial and financial reasons. Yeah. They've also been supported, the Muslim vote, rather, and endorsed by a number of Islamist organisations, including MEND and the Muslim Association of Britain. The Muslim Association of Britain will be brought up later. MEND's former head of community development and engagement, by the way, is a man named Azad Ali, and he was found guilty in 2010 of using his personal website to justify the killing of British troops in Iraq. Would have been the sort of chap that Keir Starmer would have defended under the cab rank rule, I'm sure. Ali then left MEND to join an organisation called Cage, who decided to speak out in support of Hamas after October 7th, who then gave a statement to The Telegraph alongside the Muslim Council of Britain that said they will bring legal action against Michael Gove when he flimsily tried to redefine extremism back in, May of last year, 2024. Also, one of the Muslim vote's key figures was pro-Palestinian activist Mohammed Jalal, a real name Jalaluddin Patel, a former leader in the UK of the now banned Islamist extremist group Hizb ut-Tahrir. Hizb ut-Tahrir being...
Oh, I remember those ones. They were the ones who were about to be prescribed in Germany when Keir Starmer, outside of actual cab rank rules, decided to represent them pro bono, I believe.
While he was Director of Public Prosecutions, he wrote to the European Court of Human Rights, and they were about to be prescribed in the UK by the Conservative Party, and he said that they have an important voice that needs to be heard. They were the group, by the way, that stood outside the Turkish embassy after October 7th and said, Muslim armies rise up for jihad. So it wasn't just in Israel, again. So we've never been to Israel. I don't care about it more than I do Iceland. They would do the exact same thing here, therefore ban and deport all of them. But Keir Starmer didn't think that was a good idea. Quite interesting that. In a speech at the East London Mosque in November 2023, Akhtar, the candidate, said, "We need to become an organised community. We need to become an Islamic community rather than just a community of people who happen to be Muslims. We all want Saladin to come today, right?" As in the counter-crusading force. Yeah. But no one wants to be his father. You will not get Saladin until you build the environment for Saladin, until you become his teacher, until you become his madrasa, his helper, his friend, and his ecosystem. Build that, and Allah will send you Saladin after Saladin after Saladin until you don't know what to do with them. Right, that sounds like a promise to use dawah, which is sort of like ideological indoctrination and extorting the generous free speech provisions of the liberal West in order to actually encourage the conditions which lead to violent jihad. Why has this man not been arrested? Curious, that. Weird.
And this is an attitude that's shared by basically all of these people in our country. There was that tweet going around from the other day where it was that YouTuber Muhammad Hijab, whose name sounds like a name generator for a Muslim name, who was saying that, well, even if we don't have any more people come into the country, judging by birth rates, by 2050 will be at least 10% of the population, and then more and more and more until we eventually have a critical mass and can take over. That's just how these people think.
But you're not allowed to notice that they have a collective consciousness in an imperial project. No, yet again, everyone's just integrating. They're just individuals. We all vote along the lines of policy and not along the lines of identity. Remember, you're a racist if you notice that, Harry.
But also, judging by rates of consanguinity, I think our women might even be able to fend off these particular barbarians.
Fair point, but we will also be made to pay for all of their escalating NHS treatment. Because,
that's true.
Of course, we can't be racist now, can we?
They're going to drain us financially first, that's a good point.
Yes. The other candidate, because remember, there are two people running in this race, perhaps he's more moderate, is Mohammed Idris. Now, he's also a doctor, which is a curious pattern. It seems like all of these doctors and lawyers and engineers we keep importing turn out to have sympathies with some very questionable Islamic groups.
If it looks good on a spreadsheet, you can just ignore all of the second-order consequences.
Very true. Do you know who else was a doctor? Do you remember when the leader of Hizb ut-Tahrir went on Piers Morgan's show? His name was Abdul Wahid, and then Hizb ut-Tahrir immediately got proscribed. Curious, he was working in the NHS. There was another NHS doctor as well who went out to party with the Taliban.
And there was a doctor in Germany just in December who decided to launch a terror attack as well, or at least potentially a terror attack.
Weird that. But don't worry, if they're contributing to the economy with high skilled work, culture doesn't matter.
That's the thing with the German guy as well, wasn't it? Because it turned out when the people started looking into his actual work ethic that he was a terrible doctor as well and couldn't really speak German properly. So even before the attack, what was he contributing to Germany other than being a name on a spreadsheet making a line go up somewhere?
Diversity is still our strength.
Okay.
We are told to recite that no matter the facts. So this doctor, Mohammed Idris, he leads the Muslim Council of Scotland, so he wants to expand his remit to all of Britain. How charitable. Now this actually does appear to have relations with the UK government because Rishi Sunak and Downing Street invited him to a reception at Downing Street in January 2023. So it just turns out that if you're a sectarian Islamic ideologue, you get an audience with the Prime Minister. How can I cash in on that? Would be lovely.
Just to correct myself as well, I believe the German attacker, if I remember back to the details of that case, was not actually an Islamic terror attack. He was a weird counter-Islam terror attack who decided to attack the German people anyway because he thought that they weren't doing enough to bring out non-Islamic people, refugees from these countries where they're being persecuted.
He seems to have had some strange and contradictory opinions on this as well, so motive still to be defined. However, it is curious how basically he reverts to type by using the exact same strategy as other Islamists, like in 2016 when a lorry was driven into a German Christmas market to be counter-jihad, while the jihadists did the same thing.
Ultimately, the result is the same.
Yes, they just shouldn't be here. Simple as. Just don't import people from dangerous countries. Great idea, but again, that would be decreed as far right. Racist, of course. The Muslim Council of Scotland, under Andrews, so these are the ones that have been given an invitation to Downing Street in 2023, also supported the Muslim vote. So the Muslim vote being supported by MEND and Hizb ut-Tahrir, and then supported by the Muslim Council of Scotland, who then get invited to Downing Street. So there's just a connective tissue between number 10 Downing Street, under the Conservative Party, remember, as well as Labour, and Islamist groups. Fantastic. Really glad to hear. And this makes the Conservatives complete morons for literally bringing in people who are campaigning against their own party into Downing Street, but that's nothing new, of course. Andrews was also involved in a campaign in 2021. Do you remember when the Muslims were protesting outside of Cineworlds because they were showing a film?
Oh, yeah.
It was called The Lady of Heaven. It was about Muhammad's daughter. Yeah, he was one of the ringleaders involved in that. And in 2017, he travelled to Iran as part of a delegation, meeting members of the Iranian regime and the grandson of Ayatollah Khomeini, praying at Khomeini's shrine and praising how they dealt with dissidents and apostates. Death penalty is provided over there, by the way, in Iran. So that's your choices if you are voting in the election. So I wanted to propose why the Muslim Council of Britain itself isn't a prescribed group, because do you remember that Muslim Brotherhood review I mentioned towards the start that they responded to? It could be a completely mendacious accusation. Well, I did another report on this This is part of the anti-extremism report by Dame Sarah Khan, whose sister runs Raiku, gaslighting all of the families in the Manchester Arena attack with "don't look back in anger" phrases. She used Hope Not Hate to do her polling on that. That came out at the same time as this Muslim Council of Britain report about GB News. So I reviewed them both at the same time. And then here, I found that 2015 report about the Muslim Council of Britain, and I'll quote from the UK government. In the 1990s, the Muslim Brotherhood and their associates established public-facing and apparently national organisations in the UK to promote their views. None were openly identified with the Muslim Brotherhood, and membership of the Muslim Brotherhood remains, and still remains, a secret. But for some years, the Muslim Brotherhood shaped the New Islamic Society of Britain, the ISB, dominated the Muslim Association of Britain, which I previously mentioned, and played an important role in establishing and then running the Muslim Council of Britain. Bear in mind, the group that founded Hamas also helped run the Muslim Council of Britain. So you're wondering why these are the candidates now. And as I mentioned earlier, which I'll finish on, the entire phrase Islamophobia, which their recent report was premised on, the Muslim Brotherhood actually invented that. So any time the likes of the Runnymede Trust in 1997 introduce it, or Piers Morgan on Twitter use it, they're doing the bidding of the Muslim Brotherhood. And we know this from two people. Dr. Jayaz Keppel, and he had previously alleged that the Brotherhood devised the term to seek symmetry with anti-Semitism, which is why places like Hope Not Hate always use them in the same sentence, and link opposition to Islam with objectionable views that produced Nazism and the Holocaust. And this was confirmed by a former Islamist, Abdur Rahman Mohammed, who said that he was at a meeting where members of the Muslim Brotherhood outfit, the International Institute for Islamic Thought, conspired to, quote, emulate the homosexual activists who use the term homophobia to silence critics. So anytime that you hear claims of Islamophobia or anti-Muslim bigotry or systemic racism against Muslims from the likes of the Muslim Council of Britain, remember who they actually consider authorities on the topic. Actual terrorists.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.